Hey, my name is Rafael, you're watching Rock and Roll Garage, and today we're going to talk about the 3 drummers that Paul McCartney listed as the best of all time. Well, Paul was promoting his album McCartney 3 back in 2020 at the Howard Stern show. And on that album, Paul McCartney, like on Paul McCartney 1 and 2, he wrote all the songs and he played all the instruments and recorded all the vocals. He did it everything by himself. And when they were talking about drumming, Howard asked him who were the best drummers of all time. And Paul gave him a top 3. And that's what we're going to talk about today. On the 3rd position, he chose Keith Moon, the Who's late legendary drummer, Keith Moon. Well, Keith, he sadly had a short career. Obviously, he could have been much longer, obviously, since the Who existed until today, with Pete and Roger. And sadly, his career was cut short tragically. He passed away too soon in 1978 at the age of 32. And the interesting thing about Keith Moon was that Paul McCartney was a good friend of Keith. Obviously, Keith was closer to Ringo Starr, for example, but they were friends. And in an interview back in 1997, as you're going to see it here, Paul talked about Keith Moon praising his drumming skills. And this is what he said. People often say, we want to hear you on a record. We don't want to hear you and lots of other people. I thought, well, great, I'll do that. I'll drum then. As you say, I did it on those albums, McCartney and Ram. One of my great compliments was from Keith Moon when he and John Lennon and others were going through that manic Lost Weekend episode. I went out to see them. Keith Moon asked me who drummed on Band on the Run. I said it was me. Keith said, fucking great. Coming from Keith, that was a high praise for me. So McCartney admired Keith a lot, and that would be his choice for the 3rd position. Now we go to the 2nd position. The 2nd position is another drummer that we sadly lost too soon as well. And coincidentally, we lost him with the same age as Keith Moon, who was John Bonham, Led Zeppelin drummer John Bonham. He passed away 2 years after Keith Moon. He passed away tragically also in 1980 at the age of 32 as well. And Paul had the chance to record a few tracks with John Bonham. Bonham, he played in the demo of the track Beware My Love in 1975, and in 2 tracks of the 1979 McCartney album Back to the Egg. The tracks are called Rockestra Theme and So Glad to See You Here. Those are 2 tracks that Bonham played on. He was a fantastic drummer. He was a fundamental part of Led Zeppelin's sound. And another interesting thing that McCartney said, he back in 2014 during a questions and answers session with fans on Twitter, someone asked him about Bonham, and he said he was fantastic. He was always on my top 5 drummers list. He was a great friend and a ballsy drummer. That's what McCartney said about Bonham. And in the 1st position, we go to the 1st position of the top 3. It's an obvious choice. McCartney has always been a diplomat, but I tend to think he really means it. He's not doing that because they were bandmates, and his choice was Ringo Starr, obviously, because although many people might see the Beatles as of course, as 2 really important pieces of the band and fundamental pieces were Lennon and McCartney. They are the most successful songwriting partnership of all time, certainly the most successful and influential. And there were a lot of the Beatles' success, but I think all four of them they were equally important. And George Harrison as well, of course, but Ringo, he's probably the most underrated drummer of all time, or one of the most underrated drummers of all time. I mean, there were four people who were extremely influential and extremely important. And obviously, since Lennon and McCartney were the main songwriters, and Harrison had a very successful solo career, Ringo tends to be underrated and overshadowed by them. That happens with drummers and bassists usually, but he is extremely underrated, of course, and he was fundamental to the Beatles sound. His drumming, if you ask any famous and praised drummer from most of the bands, they will say Ringo had an unorthodox way of playing. He didn't play like all the other drummers. He did things differently. And the thing is, unlike many drummers, he played what was needed in the song. He didn't do a lot of drum solos. He wasn't always trying to appear. He played what the song needed, and that's I think the superpower that Ringo Starr has. And obviously he's a really extremely important person for Paul and for the Beatles. And what Paul said, he said to Howard Stern at the time, he said, "I go Ringo on top. He's something else. Second, I'll go Bonzo, and third, Keith Moon. I mean, that's my top three. I'm going from that generation. Those are pretty good drummers." That's what Paul said. And that's it. I hope you liked the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and visit Rock and Roll Garage. You can read more about what we talked today in the article below that is in the description. Okay? See you later.